There are few places that can count themselves truly safe from the Vermintide. Tilea, Astalia, and Bretonnia certainly did not make the cut. More than most human civilization, they know of the dangers these Ratmen pose, the sprawling network deep within the planet's crust. The hordes of destruction have banded together to bring about the fall of man, and the dogs of war rally in response. We're back with another Subcommanders using Kataf's Southern Realms and the Duke's Danged Nations, the Fey Enchantress, Borgio the Besieger, and Lucrezia Belladonna, leading the charge on the outskirts of Longui. In a battle of pikes, packmasters, and pustules, the healthy smattering of gunpowder, let's see who has the wits and will to lead their faction to victory. On the Dogs of War side, Borgio the Besieger is in charge of the Tilean infantry, so he will be supplying most of the melee mercenaries and regiments of pikemen. One thing to keep in mind with all characters in Duke's mod is that they have very small HP pools, but much faster attack intervals, so duels between lords are often brutally quick, which means you have to keep an even closer eye on them. Majority AP is also a lot rarer, so the fact that Borgio has it while wielding his Mace of Might, a literal cannonball, marks him as a dangerous foe for any single lord or hero. We're joined by Belegar Ironhammer and the Dwarfs of the Kara's Anchor in the center, in charge of the ranged elements, and Lucrezia Belladonna, the poison princess of Pavona. She wields the Winds of Shaiish, a poison stiletto dagger, and vials of various pharmacological use to buff allies and debuff enemies, and is widely known as one of the most beautiful women in the world. All of her previous husbands have died under rather mysterious circumstances, but hey boys, she is single and ready to mingle. I'm sure you can fix her. She'll be in charge of yet more Tilean infantry, mostly the sword and buckler variants, plus some more Montante swordsmen, and a knight duelist in Carmine, whose job it is to hunt down important targets and slay them for honor and glory. The Fae, naturally, will be in charge of the Bretonnian cavalry wing, lots of Knights of the Realm over here on the Dogs of War right flank, and a handful of men-at-arms and yeomen to absorb charges and provide some cushion for the push-in. Remember that every single faction in this 4v4 is going to bring some fodder infantry just to round out the numbers a bit and put some bodies on the field. Deck gunners, including the Shade Wraith gunners for the Pirates of Sartosa, led by Aranus Assault Spite on her crab, and yeah, Queen Mama Bess is coming out to play. We're dropping big-time creeping barrages on the Dogs of War advance, Beastmen holding down the left flank with a Gorgon, and quite a lot of Gore Herd, so this will be mostly infantry for the Beastmen side, but a few monsters as well. Creeping, imminent, impending doom in the center as the Vermintide likes to impose its will around a grace here and the Screaming Bell. Bonebreaker Bodyguard and a Brood Horror on Overwatch with support from Slongors, Zongors, Corngors, and Pestigors. All 4 Chaos Gods represented for the Bray Herd. And the monsters of Clan Molder, making quite the splash for the forces of Chaos and Destruction. Throt the Unclean on Rufus the Naked Mole Rat, yet more Bonebreaker Bodyguards, packs of Wolf Rats and Giant Rats, and the Thing Hellpit Abomination, an anti-infantry specialist here. It can infuse itself with all kinds of warp-driven steroid injections to supercharge its power and drive it into a killing frenzy. So it's a big-scale battle in this one, 4v4, Skaven, Beastmen, and the Pirates of Sartosa against the armies of Tilea and Dwarfs, with a smattering of knightly valor thrown in for good measure. Giant Rats and Wolf Rats are distinguished in this mod. Wolf Rats are gigantic, they're the size of dire wolves, while Giant Rats are a little bit smaller and not quite as ferocious in melee. As is often the case when Queen Bess makes landfall, she will draw first blood, going after the Dawi artillery crews, and you'll notice immediately some substantial changes for her. Faster fire rate, much faster projectile, doesn't hang in the air for even half as long as the base game, and the ordnance itself airbursts, spreading flaming grog on a target below, soaking them in burning pitch. It does not have the same earth-shattering impact either. It can't outright delete units with a single well-placed shot, but as the Shade Wraith gunners open up now with their spectral volleys, the Vampire Coast artillery should have plenty of fun in a battle like this one, because unlike in 1v1s, they have a lot more bodies and support to keep them protected in a team battle with 4 players on each side. And already you can see the impact that's having amongst the Dogs of War pikemen as they make their advance. Bretonnian Knights are massing on the right flank, Gorgon is ready to receive their charge, though, so they don't have as much room to maneuver at the start as they might like. They may need to hang back and wait for the battle lines to start breaking down a little bit more, but do expect these Chilean pikemen and Montante swordsmen in the center to be able to do a lot of damage to the Skaven and Beastmen infantry and be able to push through. We've already seen how effective they were against the Lizardmen in the last Subcommanders. They're going to do pretty well here as well, as long as they aren't completely torn apart by the Queen Bess and they get some pressure on it with the Bretonnian Cavalry. Belegar Ironhammer is far behind the rest of his squadrons, but probably going straight for that Screaming Bell, trying to push that backwards and prevent it from supporting. And if you remember back to Call of Warhammer, Richter Kruger's Cursed Company, famous Dogs of War regiment, is also in this mod, and those guys showed up quite a few times in those very early days when we were casting battles before Total War Warhammer 1 came out. Call of Warhammer was such a fun mod, dude. I really love that game. It would be really sick if in the remaster of Medieval 2, if and when that comes out, that they're able to just redo the whole thing and do another Beginning of the End Times mod on the new updated visuals of the game. I think that would be really awesome. Third Age 2. So Monsters of Clan Mulder have dived into the Tilean front line, into the Militia Spearmen, should be able to break them pretty quickly with a Bonebreaker bodyguard right next to Throt the Unclean, vomiting gross things over the entire infantry formations. Hell Pit Abomination, the Thing, sink killing a bunch of them and pushing through. The bulk of the Tilean infantry is on the other side of the field, trying to break the Furries' lines to get into and silence Queen Mama Bess, so that means Throt and his monsters will have plenty of space to feast as long as they stay out of the fire arc of those Dawi guns and flamethrowers, Black Powder Rangers, and the Steelbeards, dwarf rune golems that have iron drakes and can absolutely devastate sections of infantry, are going to provide some firepower over on that side as Plague from the Screaming Bell and Grayseer ravages the center. Layer upon layer of Vampire Coast gunpowder troops protecting Queen Bess for now. Rat Ogre bodyguard sprinting over to reinforce 2 as the Grayseer drops a dreaded 13th spell. Storm Vermin with halberds coming out, Unholy Clamor proccing, and this will push back some of these elite spearmen as armored Blackfurs emerge from their tunnels behind enemy lines and are heralded by green flashes of Warp Lightning. Borgio the Besieger, neck deep in a tide of Ungor herd, laying about with his Mace of Might and breaking the foe with every swing, while Throt and the Mulder Menagerie look to turn the Tilean left and sneak into the rear with Wolf Rats and start munching on the Dwarf ranged elements who are better suited to defending themselves in melee. They won't melt instantly like they do in the base game, but with that said, Wolf Rats can be kind of scary. They're a very large model, as we've already seen. They are good at hunting down ranged targets. That is a Purple Son of Xerius from Lucrezia Belladonna, breaking some of the clan rats and slave rats that charged in that initial wave. Wolf Rats are through and diving into the rear, but here come the Hippogriff Knights of the Fey Enchantress, and those are a fantastic backline sweeper that could run through those Wolf Rats in about 5 seconds flat. Comet of Cassandora, a big one, rather, I guess a Chalice of Potions, had a bit of a misfire there. It actually didn't do that much damage, but there was some friendly fire on the Tilean pikemen, and they are wavering as a result as they try and push through this undead infantry. Zongor are right behind in that second line, ready to charge in. Mulder are back into the thick of it now with the Bone Breakers, but the Iron Drakes and Steelbeard Rune Golems shooting in with all their napalm guns might force these monsters to retreat, because it won't take very long for them to cut through that HP. Now, this is really interesting, and this is what I was talking about at the start of the game. The Knights in Carmine Duelists went straight in for a duel with Throt the Unclean, and man, you blink and their HP pools will just disappear. That's what happens when you've got big time weapon strength and small HP pools and really fast attack intervals, and Throt in 3 swings is down past half because of some really smart utilization of the Poison Potion of Pavona. God, it's a mouthful. And Lucrezia's Kiss. So Lucrezia Belladonna is putting a bunch of her buffs into her duelist, and probably would have killed Throt there if he didn't notice and disengage, and if the Hell Pit Abomination wasn't there to start zoning him out. So the Knights in Carmine Duelist will be able to flee. He's broken off for now, but he will return, and he will probably look for another duel with Throt, because while those buffs are active, he is a serious danger to the kind of squishy Brood Horror on the Mulder side. Queen Bess is continuing to cause all kinds of carnage But if this was the base game, Queen Bess would have already won the game for the Forces of Destruction. Artillery factions and builds can be very OP and challenging to deal with in team battles in vanilla, but range fire and artillery both are more support tools in Duke's vision for the game, and you still hurt a lot over time, but they won't instantly be deleting entire regiments every volley. Same with magic and spells, which gives infantry and cav some more room to shine. Like here, Dwellers Below, going to hit a decent chunk of the Vampire Coast infantry, but won't instantly evaporate all of them. Gorgon, into the thick of it now, holding down the left flank for the Beastmen and Skaven. Rewind on the Chalice of Potions that did some friendly fire damage for the Fae Enchantress. Kind of missed on that one. And then the Dwellers Below trying to rip through the back line of this Vampire Coast build and provide some more openings for the infantry to push through. Skaven are holding pretty well in the center. They pushed back some of the pikemen, dealt good damage there. Slangor engaged with more pikes, and Belagar Ironhammer leading the charge with his Hammer of Clan Angrund. Should be able to deal with these Slangor without too much issue, which not a unit that really wants to sit in melee and fight for a very long time. Better in those hit and run tactics. Warp Grinders and Montante Swordsmen wielding big Zweihanders, and the pikes are pushing through the Gore Herd, and this is where they're really going to shine against the low armor factions. We saw how good they were against the Wood Elf infantry, the last subcommanders. They're going to be very good versus Gore Herd in this scenario as well. Pestigore and Korngor might make that more challenging for the pikes, though. Thus far, there has been no answer for the Hippogriff Knights of Bretonnia, which are sweeping through the back line and easily dealing with all these fast movers from the Skaven and Beastmen. But the Molder monsters are now once again engaged with the Knight Duelist in Carmine, who's going after Throughout the Unclean and desperately trying to cut the head off the Vermintide. So close to landing that final blow. Dwarf range has been torn up by these monsters and the fast movers that were in the rear, but they are not silenced yet. The Hippogriff Knights are ensuring they stay alive and can be called upon in the back half of this battle. But the Bonebreakers for the Greyseer and Clan Molder both represent a large threat, and should they come to blow with the Hippos, it could get messy for both sides. Borgia the Besieger's in danger, while the Knight in Carmine hangs on for dear life. Beastmen have successfully beat back the assault on the right flank. Bretonnian cavalry attack is stalled near Queen Bess, side down presumably by the Shade Wraith Gunners, and support from the 4-armed Gorgon, and the Queen Bess continues to fire in and mess up some of these dwarf range units in the rear. In the center, Molder has taken a lot of damage from those duels around the pikemen and from the Knight in Carmine, who is honestly maybe the MVP of the Chilean side thus far, not counting the Hippogriff Knights, of course, which have just been absolutely beastly. They do have to run away. They've got some support from the Drake guns, but there's a lot of Skaven monsters in the center conglomerating around that Screaming Bell. Hippogriff Knights would be wise to disengage and go after some of these more isolated targets. This is another engagement they want no part of. Bonebreaker Bodyguard alongside the Gorgon, and a lot of Rat Ogres. I think those are the pit fighters of Hell's Deep. That could get super dangerous, especially because they're easily supported by the Thing Hell Pit Abomination, which is now doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Shooting up with some Warpstone gear and just going to town on a huge section of Tilean infantry who are terror routing in the face of that, well, frankly, terrifying monster. The Knights of the Realm and Hippogriff Knights have done a great job of clearing off the pressure on the dwarfs in the rear, but it's come at a painful price. Hippogriff Knights are down to half HP, and the dwarf ranged element is mostly in tatters, although their most important troops are actually still quite healthy. They've got some crossbows, a few Black Powder Rangers, and those Steelbeard Rune Golems still online. Those could do a lot of damage. Monsters of Clan Molder and the ones around that Screaming Bell looking really low too. Screaming Bell is actually one hit from death. The Knights in Carmine Duelist was still on the field, or Belagar Ironhammer, who's full HP over the right side of your screen. They could probably kill that thing in 1 or 2 swings. The Zongors and their Malagor Crowfather wings are healthy and will be getting their overshield refreshed. Unholy Clamor from the Screaming Bell activating for the 2nd or 3rd time this battle. And Rat Ogres are diving in on top of the Steelbeards. And this is an RKO out of nowhere. They were actually split off from the rest of Throughout the Unclean's monsters. And now they're charging in. And with their armor piercing, they might be able to do some good damage here against the rune golems. We'll see if they're able to defend themselves in melee. Borgio did manage to survive that fierce fight in the center. He is very low as well. Lucrezia is full HP below the hippogriffs, and another big fight is coming as those hippos look to charge in. They're gonna have to get aggressive, but they can't get too overzealous. They need support from the rest of the infantry and ranged firepower, and I'm not sure I agree with this play. They're going after Kazrak One-Eye to try and snipe him off the field, but a lot of Bonebreakers are right there, and they are quick. They've got a ton of mass, and these Hippogriff Knights have just been, well, they did such a great job up to this point, but they were just thrown away. And I think that was a mistake to land them that close to what I consider to be the most powerful element of these remaining Skaven survivors. Warp Scorch, slamming in from the flank. Borgio the Besieger surrounded by Ungor Herd once again, trying to just get rid of whatever elements of this Brain Herd that he can. Mace of Might continuing to smash through them. He's only got 481 HP, and that is dropping by 10 every time the Ungor Herd land on attack, so it's a race against time. Needs a bit of help from those Chilean pikemen, and, well, hell, I think those Iron Drakes should certainly help out. Steelbeards and the Drake Guns shooting in and clearing out some of this infantry routing on the Beastmen side, but somehow, some way, the Knight Duelist in Carmine has returned with only 277 HP, and once again, the Poison Potion of Pavona and Lucrezia's Kiss, giving him those really powerful steroids to go after the Screaming Bell, but not able to land that killing blow. The Rat Ogre Bonebreakers have maybe been the MVP for the forces of destruction and chaos, and they managed to clear that off, deal with the threat, and now they can continue their rampage, which has continued unabated for, honestly, most of the battle. The Bonebreakers were both Frothy Unclean and that Screaming Bell Grace here have been fantastic this battle. They've been everywhere, killing infantry, killing monsters, killing high-value targets, and protecting their lords. And it's actually comical at how big those brutes are. They are double or I guess that's more like triple or quadruple the size of the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, which are already pretty large monstrous infantry regiment. And as they slam into the Knights of Origo, another famous regiment of renown in the Dogs of War arsenal, those infantry will be utterly decimated. Throt the Unclean will dive into the Steelbeard Rune Golems, go straight for them, actually. Big shots coming in, but they're not really designed to kill single entities. They're better on the wave clear side. Crossbows and Black Powder Rangers are now about to feel the full, undivided attention of these Bonebreakers. And as the ranged elements are tied down, inundated by this swarm of Clan Molder, it is going to be the end of the Dogs of War, Bretonnian, and Dwarfen alliance. These two command centers for the Thagaraki making a huge impact with their mobility, with their innate regen, which Bonebreakers have. Froth the Unclean also being able to support them with Remoldered, and the Screaming Bell with its dreaded 13th spell, able to break through the center with the help of those Bonebreakers, and then of course the fantastic Overwatch support from Queen Bess, dealing all kinds of damage, and Beastmen protecting the flanks. A lot of synergy on both sides, some real nice plays. Unfortunately, I had an amazing Dogs of War 4v4 against the Forces of Chaos, Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle, and the Dogs of War actually won that one, but that one got corrupted, so I wasn't able to bring that one to you guys, so it's going to show up in the last two replays as 0 for 2 for the Dogs of War, but they did win some epic games against some really good factions. The Mono Gods are pretty crazy in Duke's Damnations, and the Dogs of War made good account of themselves in that one as I controlled the Bretonnian Cavalry. But yeah, in this one, it was a little bit too much. Some good performances from the Pikemen yet again, and that Knight Duelist in Carmine, Lucrezia Belladonna, supporting her Duelist extremely well. I really liked that play in multiple times. It was almost able to kill high-value targets on the Skaven side, but some good support from the Helping Abomination and Bonebreaker kept them alive, and the Knights in Carmine Duelist wasn't able quite to finish the deal. Queen Bess and these artillery builds from the Vampire Coast, the Pirates of Sartosa, very powerful in games like this because you have 3 other teammates to help protect your flanks, and that just allows something like the Queen Bess, which is known for just overwhelming firepower, to continue shooting because you have so many bodies to throw into the meat grinder and protect it. And in this battle, the Dogs of War were not able to get around, get through the center, Knights of Bretonnia weren't able to charge into the rear and finish it off, and that was mostly down to the Gorgon and the Beastmen just shutting down that flank and preventing any egress on that front. Hippogriff Knights were definitely the MVP on the Forces of Order side. They got 165 kills and a chevron earned, 1300 damage value. Faye also putting in some work with her 2000 damage value, with Dwellers Below and Chalice of Potions dropping from on high. But yeah, the cavalry itself did not have the best time, and partially due to the map, partially due to some good play on the destruction side.